So we're going to do Advanced Diploma Synoptic Assessment for BPP Practice number 2. Let's start from the task 1.1. That is for 15 marks. And after that, we move to the next task. We'll see some question from the Excel as well. We'll try to see how much we can do. All right, so task 1.1, let's start with that. And the ethical question will be a little bit straightforward sometimes. And of course, like all you have to do, you have to choose the ethical threat, then the threat to objectivities, and some of the threat, they'll give you some indication. So you need to tell what type of threat it is. And you have to write some essay type question as well, where normally you will receive an email from the director or from the partner, and they'll ask you, can you reply to this email? So when you reply to this email, you have to explain basically what they're asking. Now, a few things it is very important to consider when you write any type of writing question. You need to know the meaning of some word. For example, in the requirement, they might ask you identify, identify, identify. They might ask you explain. Then they might ask you critically analyze, or they might tell you discuss. So they might tell you discuss about this, identify this, explain about this, and critically analyze this. So every single starting point of the question will have a different meaning. So if you read at the beginning of this question bank, and that will help you to understand what type of question will be in the exam and how we could approach for the answer. For example, if the question start with identify, so you have to pick something. So question asking for something, identify. For example, if the question asks you identify the city center in London, so you have to identify how many city center we have in London, so you tell the name. If the question asks you explain, then you don't have to identify, you just explain about it. Then if the question asks you about the critically analyze, that means they're asking to explain both props and cons. So they're asking like to tell advantage and the disadvantage both. So this type of question, obviously you have to make some note. So if the question asks, if the question start with explain, so you explain. If the question start with discuss, then what you do need to write. So this is very, very important. Sometimes any type of question come, we write the same way, and that's the reason we don't get the expected score in the exam. So this is the simple thing you have to be considered before you write, especially the essay type question. Anyway, so let's start with the tax one number 1.1 for 15 marks. So we have here, it says, complete the following sentence. A professional accountant who complies with the law, a professional accountant who complies with the law brings no disrepute on the profession, is perceived as being ethical by other people, has complied with the fundamental principle of what? So you have to pick from here. So as a professional accountant, we need to make sure our behavior is always professional. So obviously it's not only like that will disrespect our profession. Of course, like we have to comply with this fundamental principle. So one of the fundamental principle is professional behavior. So you would say professional behavior. So you're going to write here professional behavior. All right, so let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, the requirement for the ethical business practices means that substantial development and corporate social responsibility are becoming increasingly important. Now, this one, corporate social responsibility, or we can say CSR, corporate social responsibility, nowadays is become really, really important for every single business. The reason is people want to show they are not only in the society for the business. For example, if we talk about Tesco says like they give a donation every year for the cancer research. If you look at the ASDA website, they said they give a donation to save the children. And some of the company, for example MNS, they said we don't use the plastic that will destroy the environment, so they mainly use the plastic that will be not harmful for the environment or for the society. Then for example like there are a lot of company, they just want to show to the society they are not only here for making the profit, they are also they are also here to do something for the community, for the society, and for the country. So this is comes under the CSR, corporate social responsibility. Now corporate social responsibility, now it's become the part of the company financial statement. So before that it wasn't very popular, but nowadays when you look at the chairman statement, so every year company publish their financial statement. Not only for the accounts, the company have their own financial statement and publish their all the features they have done, all the activities they have done for the whole year. And that is mainly available for everyone. So if you want to read, anyone want to read, they can. So when you're reading a company financial statement, then you can see like the profit and loss account, then you can see the balance sheet, then you can see the cash flow statement is notes to the account. This is all are financial matters, but on the bottom they add a new section nowadays. This is called CSR. Even though this is not required by the law, it is not required by the law, but still so many companies, they try to show they are not here only for the business, they want to do something for the community. So that's the reason the corporate social responsibility become so popular nowadays, and every single company try to show something like they are trying to help the community. Okay, so let's read this requirement. Number B is saying which of the below is true in respect of the accountant's role in respect of the above. So statement, we have few statement here. The first one we have sustainability and the CSR, corporate social responsibility, are not financial matter and sit outside the remit of the professional accountant. So obviously the sustainability is basically the word. So that means like when we run an organization, is has to have a sustainable plan. So for how long it will go for, what will be their activities in the market, in the business. So sustainability is very important. And the CSR are not financial matter. So these two are, they're saying it is a non-financial matter. So non-financial matter means where the money is not involved. So this is something that is part come as a part of the responsibility rather than amount or figure, and sit outside remit of the professional accountant. Okay, the next one they are saying sustainability and the corporate social responsibility form part of the accountant obligation to work in the public interest. This is number two. Number three is saying sustainability and the corporate social responsibility are only key considerations for the accountant working in particular industries such as the renewable energy industry. So if you work only this industry, that time you can consider this too, otherwise not. So which one you should say true in respect of the accountant role? So we might say number two is the more suitable answer here, because sustainability and the corporate social responsibility form part of the accountant obligation to work in the public interest. All right, move to the next one. The next one we have here is saying Danny is a professional accountant working in a practice. Now, when you see the word called practice, remember practice means when you work in accountancy firm. So on the high street, we have seen a lot of accountancy firm. So for example, the ACCA, the ICW, they have lot of chartered accountant over there. So basically, they work for the client. So all these businesses, the self-employed, all these people are client for them. So the reason I'm saying, if you see the practice, that means remember they're not employee. If a professional accountant, they work in a practice, basically they work independently, so they are not employed by a company. So they make a farm, they make a practice, and they provide services for the different client for the different services. Now if this type of question come, and if you see they said like to whom they should report in the case of any ethical threat, remember they don't have MLRO. So if an accountant work in a practice, he don't have the MLRO, that is like money laundering reporting officer, so they have only NCA. So if the matter is really serious, they don't tell to MLRO because they don't have an MLRO. But if an accountant work in a company, and if he is employee, he always report to MLRO first, then he report to NCA. Normally, the MLRO will be the responsible person who will be report to NCA. But if you work in a practice, you don't have any MLRO, so you actually inform the NCA, the National Crime Agency. Okay, so carrying out some work for his client, Inge, he has acted outside the limit of his professional expertise. So he is acting outside of his limit of the professional expertise. Now, for example, let's say you are an accountant but not the auditor, and someone come to you and said like, can I have some internal audit service? And obviously you never done the audit service, or you don't have this expertise or capacity or capability, but still you try to carry on the work because you think you are qualified, you can do it, but you never had an experience, but still you want to do it. As a result, as a result of the work carried out by Danny, Inge has now incurred a regulatory fine. Of course, if you are not expertise on that area, and if you still try to give the services, that could lead to a penalty or fine for your client. So the requirement here is number C, state one which of the reason below whether Inge might be able to seek compensation from Danny for this loss on each of the following grounds. So under which ground or under which circumstance we have here, the client can ask for a compensation. So we have a professional negligence, we have a self-interest, and we have a fraud under the false representation. So which one, under the which ground, Inchi can look for the compensation from Danny? So we would say that will be our professional negligence, isn't it? Because this is the reason the client have a fine, and they can take action from the accountant and look for some compensation under this ground. So you said professional negligence. All right, so let's move on to the next one. The next one we have here, it says Sparkis Limited, a small home electrical company who you have worked with for a number of years, has unexpectedly requested your practice to help in selling a number of residential properties that they have recently acquired. On the requirement, we can see here they said state whether the customer due diligence should be carried out before accepting this work. Now let's talk about little bit about the due diligency. So this diligency is basically kind of an audit. It's like a audit, or it's like a checking before you give any services. For example, when the customer don't need the full audit service, they can ask for this due diligency service. They can say, I don't need the full audit service. That means you don't have to check everything. You don't have to give the assurance like true and fair, but this is the initial check. So I can say, for example, it is not the vast check, it's not the substantial check, but it is kind of the initial assessment. So before you take the decision, you do some research, you do some due diligence, and after that, obviously, you can decide you should go for that or not. So it is not the full audit, but it's kind of an audit that the accountant do for the client, especially when they try to buy a business. For example, let's say if Tesco decided to buy Sainsbury, so the accountant first will carry out this due diligence check, and will check how much is the value of the net asset, how much is the value of the goodwill, and after that checking everything, and the accountant will tell the client, is that project suitable to buy, or is this asset suitable to buy, is this premises suitable to buy. So before you give the decision to your client, you basically carry on this check. So what is the statement here? So you have some statement, we need to say is it true or false. The first statement we have here says due diligence procedures are not necessary as this situation relates to an existing client. So this means I already know this client for a few years, so I don't have to carry on any check. I don't have to carry on any test. I don't have to do any audit for this client because I already know this client. So is it true or is it a false? So obviously, like even though we know the client for a few years, still we have to carry out our own work. So we cannot just compromise, or we cannot just say, okay, we don't have to do this work because we already know the client for more years, so we can carry on this work because we don't have to do it because we know this client personally, so we cannot do it. The next one we have here is said, you should report this matter urgently to the relevant authorities. There is a clearly something amiss. So do you think, is it true or false? Like, should we report someone urgently, relevant authorities for that? So it's not something like true, because we don't have to report someone. It's not something money laundering or something here that I have to report immediately. So this is also false. This is a 2 marks question, and this type of question could be really quick. If you know the answer, then you can quickly answer this question and you can move to the next one. All right. The next question we have here, that is, you are newly qualified accounting technician working in a practice, and your colleagues peers has been off work sick for the past week, and your line manager asks you to go through his in tray and deal with anything that need urgent attention. In Pierre's in tray, you find a letter addressed to Pierre from one of his client, Martin. In this letter, Martin asks Pierre to include a revenue figure in the tax return, which is much lower than the actual revenue received by the client. Martin offers Pierre the £1,000 you need to clear your gambling debt in return for inclusion of this incorrect figure. Martin also suggested that if this is not done by the end of the month, he will inform the firm of the other way in which Pierre has helped him to present suitable figure in the past. So basically, obviously, obviously, this is something like if you done something wrong before, and obviously after that, if the client asking the same thing after, and if you deny, so they said if you deny, then they will tell the firm about the past help he done. So let's have a look what will be the situation here. It said complete the following sentence. As a result of this later, Pierce faces threat of what and to his professional ethics. So basically, we have to see what type of threats we have. They're offering £1,000 to Pierce. So of course, this is the clearly self-interest rate, because if someone offer you money, that will be like from here we can pick, that is the self-interest. Where personal interests are involved, that will be the threat of self-interest. So we can say the threat of self-interest, self-interest, and what is, and to his professional ethics. So what is the threat we are feeling for this client, from this client? So he is basically, there is two things. One, he is offering the money. First, he said, take the money to the work. So this is a self-interest. And after that, he said, if you don't do it, I'll tell your firm what you have done before. So it's like a pressure. So remember that when there is a pressure for any reason, it could be like physical pressure, it could be like mental pressure, it could be like, I will leave your farm, then they can say like, if you don't do it, we'll change the accountant next year. So any type of pressure come from the client, it is called the intimidation. So this is intimidation threat, that will be the intimidation threat. So any type of pressure come from the client, that will be considered as the intimidation threat. We said intimidation, intimidation threat. All right. No, the it will not be count as the money laundering now. All right, the next one we have, we said state which three of the following of peer fundamental principle are threatened by the letter. So which three fundamental principle are threatened by this letter? So we have a few things. We have integrity, we have objectivity, we have a confidentiality, we have a professional competence and due care, and we have a professional behavior. So this is the fundamental principle of ethics. So we know all of this, like this is the part of the fundamental principle of ethics. This is the Dr. Pico. And from here, which three is mainly threatened by this letter? So the first one is the integrity. So integrity, obviously the honesty. There is a question of the honesty. If you take a money and if you do some work that is not ethical, so that will raise a question for your integrity, number one. Number two is objectivity. So you are not fair. You are doing something that is not very fair. So when you're biased and obviously you are not doing something fair, this is the threat of objectivity. So this is also objectivity. And finally, it's not a professional, isn't it? It is not a professional. You take some money and change the revenue figure, so that is not, you can do, it's not a professional behavior. So this is also will be threatened from the fundamental principle point of view. So professional behavior, integrity, and objectivity. All right, the next one we have here, they said which of the following action, which of the following action would it be the most appropriate for you to take on discovery of this letter? So you are the one who was basically to try to cover the job for him, and you found all of this. So what will be now your action? Because you are not someone like, this is not your regular work. So you just find it out because you try to cover him and you found all of this. So what will be your action now? So the first one, they said, hide the letter. So obviously we don't have to read this. We're not going to hide the letter. And report misconduct immediately to AAT. We really don't have to tell AAT about it if we find something there. Discuss the situation with your line or immediate line manager. So that could be the most suitable option here, because I'll speak to my line manager. I have found all of this. Maybe he will take the right decision, because maybe uh, your responsibility to let the higher authority knows, and after, maybe if they don't do anything, maybe you think about something else. But at the beginning you have to tell your line manager, your supervisor, who is basically the manager or the owner. You have access, the higher authority. All right, move to the next one. We have task 1.2. That's for 15 marks question. Say you are an accounting technician at B and Co. The partner of the firms, Mr. Tennant, has asked you to answer some queries which have come into the office from some small client. Okay, so LC has purchased a new van from Van and Co. for the business using a bank loan. She is unsure how to account for it and explained that she has heard of the depreciation but doesn't understand what it is and how to calculate this. Very simple question. So they purchase a van and they just want to know how to record this transaction, so in the form of journal. The cost of the van, we have 13,500. That's the cost of the van, 13,500. And the expected scrap value, 1,500. Alice expect to use the van for 3 years before she upgrade to a bigger van. So we can say the useful life is 3 years. Let's read the requirement. Show the double entry for the van which LC has purchased in the journal below using the pick list to select the relevant account. So all you need to do, you need to write a journal for that. When you purchase a van and she used the bank account to purchase the van, what will be the journal for that? When you buy a van or any asset, this is the asset. And of course, asset is always debit. If you buy asset, it could be a van, it could be land, it could be premises, anything we buy, this is our asset. And if asset come to the business, this is our debit. So asset at cost will be debit. Asset could be anything. So we said non-current asset, any asset that we use more than 1 year, this is our non-current asset. So non-current asset will be debit. So we said NCA. This time it is a vehicles. In the quotient, if they said van, you can use the van as well. Non-current asset van. The amount will be the cost price. Remember that, 13,500. And this is asset, so it will be all debit. And the money paid from the bank. So you purchase the van by using the bank account. So of course money will go from the bank. And if the money goes from the bank, your bank will go down. So if the asset decrease, then the bank will be credit. Bank will be credit. All right, that's fine. Move to the next one. The next one, they said calculate the depreciation on the new van on a straight line basis. How much will be the depreciation? It's quite straightforward and easy. So we have the cost, we have 13,500. So we know that this depreciation, the method or the formula. So we said cost minus scrap value Scrap value is also called residual value, the same thing. Divide number of useful life. So cost minus residual value. So cost is 13,500 and the scrap value is 1500 and number of years is 3. And that will give me the depreciation 4,000 per year. That's it. So that's how we can calculate the depreciation. So it's not a very difficult thing. All right, let's move to the next one. The next one we have here James and Suji. James and Suji have been the owner of a partnership businesses for many years, sharing profit and loss in the ratio 3 is to 2, with James receiving the larger share. So James is 3 and Suji is 2. On 1st January 2007, the partnership agreement was changed to so that James and Suji will share the profit and loss into 2 is to 1, with James receiving the larger share. So now it is changed to 2 is to 1. Goodwill was valued 84,800 at this date. No entries for goodwill have yet been made in the partnership record. Now, the first thing we need to understand, the goodwill is the excess value of the net asset. For example, if someone asks you how to calculate the goodwill, so you need to say goodwill is the excess of net asset. So for example, if the net asset have a value of 10,000 and if I paid 12,000, so the 2,000 I paid extra, that is for the goodwill. So anything excess of the net asset, that value is called goodwill value. Now, internally generated goodwill is not allowed. If you can generate goodwill for your company internally, it is not allowed because you might generate a lot of goodwill for your company and you keep this one on the financial statement and your asset become really high, because you might say the goodwill value for your company is 1 million but actually it is not. You cannot decide how much is the value of the goodwill. So goodwill has to be decided by the external valuer. So when you actually buy and sell your property, only that time you consider or create the goodwill. Now in a partnership, there are few reasons when the goodwill is created. The first one is for when there is a retirement retirement of when there is a retirement of the existing partner. When there is a retirement of the existing partner, we have to consider how much is the value of the business. The reason is, for example, let's say three partner, they doing the business like together for 10 years and one partner decided to leave or one partner decided to retire. So of course, before he want to leave, he want to see how much is the current value of the business. So he tried to consider everything, the net asset and the goodwill. And after that, he found how much is the excess of the net asset. And he said, this is the value for the goodwill. So this is number one. Number two is admission of a new partner. Admission of a new partner. So before taking the new partner in the business, you want to see how much is the value of the goodwill, because when you started the business, let's say 15 or 20 years back, you have invested only £10,000. But after 10 years, maybe your business is very successful. So you're not going to take the same money if you try to join to your business now. So you will say you have to pay more because we make this business so successful. So you have to pay more what we paid that time. So if you charge any money more from the new partner, that will be because of the goodwill. Now there is two way we record the goodwill. There is two basically treatment for the goodwill. Number one is a record the goodwill, record goodwill. When you record the goodwill, we always use the old ratio. So old ratio means the previous ratio we had. For example, here is 3.2. And after that, once we record the goodwill, the next step is very next we have to eliminate the goodwill, because as we said, goodwill cannot be in the financial statement. We have to remove the goodwill. We generate the goodwill for a reason, for taking a new partner or for the retirement, but for the next we have to eliminate the goodwill. So we have to eliminate the goodwill, and when we eliminate the goodwill, we use the new ratio. For example, for here 2:1. And the next thing is the goodwill. Always when we basically record the goodwill, it increase the capital. So any money come because of the goodwill, it will be increase the capital of the existing member. So whatever the money we got from the goodwill, that will increase our previous investment. For example, let's say before the capital was 10, and because of the goodwill, let's say 5,000 of the goodwill, so new capital will be 15. So that means when I said goodwill is a debit and capital will be credit. Now the capital is already credit, and if I make the capital credit again because of the goodwill, then my capital will go up. So let's have a look here. What do we have here? So we can say we have a goodwill 84,800 and no entries for the goodwill have yet been made, so we didn't record the goodwill yet. So the requirement here is show the entries required to introduce the goodwill into the partnership accounting record on 1st January 2007. So we have to introduce the goodwill. That means we have to record the goodwill. The first thing is that we record, then after that we eliminate. The question might ask you only for the record, the question might ask you for eliminate, or the question might ask you both, record then eliminate. So you have to know all of this. So we said goodwill we have to record, so goodwill will be debit, and that will be 84,800, and that will increase our capital. So we said capital gems and capital Suji. So that will be credit because it will increase the capital. Is it how much? 50,880. Okay, 5880. And we have here that is 33. We can write the amount here basically 5880, and we can say this is the credit, and 33,920, that will be credit. So this is how we can record the goodwill. And remember, we're using the old ratio. They give us two ratio intentionally so that you become confused which one you're going to use, the 3:2 or 2:1. When there is a record, that will be the old ratio. When there is elimination, there will be the new ratio. Yes, omit, if there is a retirement or if there is admission, then the goodwill will be created. All right, so let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, number D. Which of the following should be included in a partnership agreement? Now, in a partnership agreement, you can include all of these. For example, how much will be the salary, how much will be the drawings interest, everything. But there is certain thing that has to be on the partnership agreement, and if it is not there, you cannot get it. Especially that will be your capital interest. So interest on capital is has to be this one has to be on the partnership agreement. The reason is normally when you invest the money in the business, when you introduce the capital in the business, normally you don't charge normally you don't charge the interest on the investment that you make to the business. So if you have a plan, the money I'm going to invest in the business and I'm going to charge interest on that, then you have to mention this one on the partnership agreement. If you didn't mention this one on the partnership agreement, you might not claim the interest on capital. So it is very important. If you have a plan to take a capital interest, then you have to include it on the partnership agreement. All right, so let's move to the next one. Okay, the next one we have here, say the partnership has recently disposed of a large piece of machinery which is used to make a key item for the business. The machinery originally cost was 35,000 on 1st of January. Okay, the policy is to calculate depreciation on a diminishing balance. You can say the reducing balance, same thing. Reducing balance and the diminishing balance is the same thing. At 25%, scrap value is expected to be 3,000. The machinery is sold for 12,000 on 31st of December 2008. The date is so important in this type of question because you have to calculate the depreciation based on the date. Calculate the profit or loss on the disposal of the machinery. So this machine is sold for 12,000. Did we make a profit or did we make a loss? Now this type of question will be in the exam definitely. And sometimes you see this question, they said they buy in January and they sold in December. But in the exam, they might say they buy middle of the year or they sold middle of the year. It is very, very common in the exam. They're not going to tell you like you buy January and you sold it December. They might tell you in the middle of the year or just before the end of the year and maybe like after 2 months starting of the year. So what you need to do, you need to read the more additional information. So they will tell you either they will tell you the company have a policy not to charge depreciation at the year of acquisition, but the full depreciation on the year of disposal. Or they might tell you the company have a policy to charge full year depreciation on the year of acquisition, but no depreciation on the year of disposal. So this type of line definitely will be there. So you have to be very considerable when you calculate the depreciation when the asset by middle of the year or sold the asset middle of the year. All right. So did we make a profit or loss? So I'll give you 2 minutes. Maybe you can have a look and tell me if you can. Otherwise, we'll do it together. So I'll give you 2 minutes. Let's have a look. All right. So let's have a look now. Let's do it together. So the first thing we need to know, this is like the diminishing balance, and we have to know this depreciation policy, how we can calculate the depreciation under the diminishing balances. So let's do the first one. We have a how many years? That's the first thing we need to know. Year one, 2006. So we can year one for the 6, then year number 2 for the 7, year number 3 for 8. So it's basically 3-year depreciation. On December 31st, we have sold it. So obviously it's for the 3 years. So let's have a look how much was the cost. 35,000 was the cost. And all you need to do, you need to do the depreciation. That is 25%. So 25% of that will give me the depreciation. And that is 8750, 8750. And after the year end, my carrying value will be how much after 1 year? So 35,000 minus 8750, that will give us the carrying value for after the year end, isn't it? So let's say this is how much? So let's do that. 35,000 minus 8750, that's 26 to 50. 26 to 50. That's my carrying value after the 1 year. And this carrying value, I'm going to use it for the next year depreciation. So I'm going to bring it here, 26 to 50. And I'm going to use again 25%. So 26 to 50 times 25%. That gives me 5, 6, 65, 62. Okay, 65, 62. That's my depreciation. And if I minus it, that gives me the carrying value after year number 2, 19,688. And I'm bringing again this one. The closing is the opening again, 688 times 25%. So that will give me the depreciation for year number 3. That is 4922. 4922. And after the year number 3, the carrying value we have how much? 14,766. So that's my carrying value after the year number 3. And we sold it for how much? Sold it for 12,000. So we sold for 12,000. So actually my carrying value is 14, but I sold it for 12. So I'm making a loss, isn't it? And the difference, basically these two, will tell me how much loss we have made. And the loss is 2766. So loss on disposal. Loss on disposal. So you can say here loss on disposal, obviously 2766. That's a loss. All right. So if you have any question, obviously let me know. Uh, this is not very difficult thing. No, Allah, we don't, because the scrap value only take away when you use the straight line. So when you use the straight line, we said cost minus the scrap value or the residual value and divide by the number of useful life. But if we use the dimension, we don't minus the scrap value. This is just for it's a trick. So if you don't know, you might use it and that will give you the wrong figure. Um, yes, Javid, if there is a no instruction, you can calculate the full year. That should be fine. But if they give you middle of the year, if they give you like the breakdown of the year, they'll definitely tell you what to do. So the way you did for your advanced bookkeeping paper, that will be more or less like same. All right, so let's move on to the next one then. The next one we have here is says a third client, CNC. A third client, CNC Co. are small but complex local businesses specializing in foreign currency deals. You are unsure how to deal with this type of accounting. What is your next course of action? So if you are unsure, what are you going to do? So we have few options here. Number one, we have leave the work on CNC for another colleague to find. After all, the client will chase if they haven't heard anything for a while. So you said like leave it. If we don't say anything to the client, the client will come back. So obviously someone will do it. That show a willing attitude and give it to your best shot. So you just think, okay, let me try if I can do. Request to be removed from the job. So you said I cannot do it, so remove it from the job. Or consult with your line manager about the task. So obviously, like that will be the best option, isn't it? We better to speak to the line manager and tell him, is there any option or is there anyone know this work, he can do it. So that will be the most suitable option. Consult with your line manager about the task. The next question we have for the G is said, state the fundamental principle which is at risk in the Christie and Co scenario. So from this scenario, which fundamental principle are in threat from the Dr. Pico? So which one is more thre- um, more risk? So that is professional competence and due care. Very well done. Professional competence and due care. All right, so let's move on to the next one. The next one, this type of question will come. In this type of question, they will basically email you, and you have to type an answer, and that will be like kind of big marks. For example, this question for the email we can see is a 9 marks. So for the 9 marks question, you have to write at least 15 sentence. Remember that. For the 9 marks question, you have to write at least 15 sentence, because for 1 marks you have to write 1.5 line. This is the normal standard. All right. So task 1.3 for 15 marks. Let's have a look. We'll do a little bit discussion about it. You are currently working on the year-end financial statement. The work involves the collection of revenue and costs from three divisions. One of your colleagues has mentioned that to speed up communication between the division, he has been using a social media site to transfer and share financial information. He has suggested that you should also do so, as the present company policy of password protected data transfer is slow and inconvenient. So he's saying something to share the information through the social media because the system right now the company using is not very fast. So the first requirement we have here, that is referring to the AAT Code of Professional Ethics, explain the ethical principles that are at risk here. Number one. Number two is, what action should you take to reduce the risk to the ethical principle? So first question is, what is the um, what is the ethical principle? Obviously here, so explain the ethical principle at risk. Which ethical principle you think at risk from this scenario if you share the information through social network? So obviously the first one is confidentiality. If you do that, maybe the information will not be confidential at all, and obviously this is not very professional, isn't it? So the professional behavior. So we can say two ethical principles that are on risk. Number one is the confidentiality, and number two is professional behavior. All right. So obviously, like, the organization have a professional and legal obligation to keep the data and the information secure and confidential. Of course, like, you will not do anything that will be like breaching this law. And obviously, if you don't take care of the information very well, maybe you can come under the GDPR law. So that could make a big penalty for your company. So from the company policy point of view, you cannot do it, and also from your professional behavior, it's not going to be very suitable. Like, you use the social network to share the company information and get the data from there. Then the next thing is like, what action should you take to reduce the risk to the ethical principle? What will be your action? So the first thing will be like, obviously you'll refuse, isn't it? So he said, I must refuse to share and exchange information in the way and only communicate information as per company policy, so where I can protect the data and the confidential information. So this will be your action. So obviously, like you're not going to follow your colleagues, whatever he said. All right, so let's move to the next one. The next one we have here. Your odds fair have been realized as the financial data your colleague uploaded onto the internet has been deleted and lost. A backup copy has not been made. You have received the following email to you from your colleague, subject missing information. Say, hi, I have lost some important financial information, and the information I need are amount paid for the trade purchase, so the purchase and the sales revenue. I need this figure for year-end statement of profit and loss account. So basically, one of your colleague emailed you and he said like he lost some financial information, and he want to know how much is the trade purchase, so that is like total purchase, and how much is the total sales. He said he need this information for the profit and loss account. I have been able to recover that opening payable amount was 5,400. So that means he said the opening balance for the purchase ledger control, that is 5,400. The closing payable is 4,800. An amount paid from our bank to the trade supplier is 108. So he said the opening balance was 5,400. The closing balance is 4,800, and we paid from our bank. So we look at the bank statement. From our bank, we have seen we paid 108 to the supplier. If it is any help, the sales team have informed me that we have operating profit 20% on the markup on cost. Obviously, we know the markup is always on the cost. So if I try to understand how much is the sales, and if I know my cost, I will add it 20%, and that will give me the total sales, because the question said we're looking for the sales, isn't it? So if I know my purchase, I can go there by using this one, the markup. And inventory value are negligible. Okay, so reply to your colleague's email explaining the approach that is required, and also supply the sales and purchase figure that your colleague is requesting. All right, so I'll not go for the discussion. I'll give you 2 minutes. If you can tell me how much is the purchase figure and how much is the sales figure. And of course, already you have understand this question from the incomplete records. Where some information is incomplete, we use the incomplete records to complete the information. So they're asking how much is the sales and how much is the purchase. So I'll give you 2 minutes to all of you. Just think, and we'll do it together after that. All right, very well done. So I can see all of you have the right answer. It's very good. Incomplete records in the exam, this question will be definitely there. It's one of the very good area, as important area as well. So incomplete records is all about when some information is missing and you're looking for some other information. Now for the purchase ledger control, we know this is the opening balance. This is opening balance. So basically it's come from the last period, isn't it? The opening balance always come from the last period. And the closing balance, this is the balance is still outstanding. So this balance is still we have. And we paid from the bank 108, isn't it? This is the money we have paid. So we said, okay, we have paid 108 from the bank, and we have to keep the closing as well, isn't it? So the closing is 4,800. This balance is still outstanding. So if I added this to it, look like that's my total purchase ledger control, because this is already paid and this one is still outstanding. I have to pay. But before I decide this two, if I added, that will be my total credit purchase, but I have to see some balance come from the last period. That's the opening balance. So this opening balance is not relevant to this period. It come from the last period because the last period closing is the opening for this period. So I said, okay, I'm going to minus that. That is 5,400. That come from the last period. And that will give me my purchase for this period. That will be 107 400. All right, so this is that. Now if we have the purchase, we can get the sales, isn't it? Because we know the markup is 20%. So my purchase, so 107 400, and all I need to do, I need to multiply this one 1.2, or you can increase by 20%. It will give you the same thing. So if you multiply that, that will give me the total. How much? 12880. That's it. So this too is the information. But remember that when you're writing this type of answer, you have to follow exactly the same template. So you're going to say 2. This time the 2 will be not you. This time will be to your colleague. So you're going to follow that. To colleague at accountant. So colleague at accountant. Then from, that will be you. So you're going to write you accountant. And subject, the same thing, missing information. And then you're going to start with hi. And on the bottom, you have to say the way they said regards. You're going to write the regards, because this will give you at least 1 marks for that. If you don't follow the template, you're going to lose easy marks. So if you just follow the template, you have like additional 1 marks from the presentation. And after that, you're going to write some additional information for them. You're going to say you must have to keep some information. You must have the record for the transaction, because you cannot lose it. You say some to your colleagues. And after that, you explain. The question said explain. So you need to explain. So you need to say this is required by the law. You have to keep the documents for a certain amount of years. So if you lose this type of information, the HMRC or the authority can give you the penalty. So this is very important to keep this information safe. So you'll explain all of this. After that, you say this is look like all this information you need. This is incomplete records, and you said there are a few techniques that we can use to complete the information if the information is missing or you need to complete the information. And after that, you can see that's for the payable. So you said you can get the opening balance from the closing balance from the last year. So whatever is the opening this year, that will be the closing for the last year, isn't it? So if you look at the last year closing balance, that will be the opening for this. And after that, how much money you have paid this year, you can look this information from the bank statement. So your bank statement will tell you how much you paid, and obviously how much is still outstanding. So this information you can see which invoice is still not paid. So that's how you can complete the information. And once you have all of this, you can calculate your purchase the way you did here. Just explain that. And after that, you said like once you have the purchase and you have the information from the sales team that they make a profit 20% and it is markup. So markup is a relation to the cost. So we need to add 20% on the markup, and that will give you the sales price. So we are doing this one here the way we did. So we add 20% with the markup to get the sales figure. And this is the way the sales amount come that. So explaining all of this to your colleague, and at least try to write 15 lines for that, 15 sentence, and that will give you 9 marks. So you have to include the explanation with the number as well. And always remember, if you write this type of answer, you make sure you always try to link with the scenario. So you don't just explain what is incomplete records, how's it work, don't know. So you need to see what is the requirement in the question, the scenario. So you have to link the scenario with the answer. It's very, very important. because this question will be marked by person. It's not going to be marked by computer, so it will be seen by a person. So obviously he will read, and he will give you, of course, more credit if the answer is more suitable based on the requirement. All right, the next question we have task 2.1. That's for the Excel. So we'll do this one for the Excel, and let's take a break first. Then we'll come back, and by the time I'll download the Excel file, then we can start with task 2.2 for our uh, next question for the Excel. So let's take a half an hour break. We come back 7:45, and we'll start with task 2.1. I'll see you in 30 minutes time. Okay, so 2.1, you are Harry Sullivan, a part qualified accounting technician. You work for the Henswood Co., which manufactures kitchen utensil. Okay. You cover all aspects of the bookkeeping and the accounting for the business, and you report to Sarah Foster, the chief executive. Okay. So today's date is 12th of November. All right. So let's sort it out that. So Sarah has asked you to do a comparison between the actual overhead for 31st of October 2002 and the overhead absorbed using the basis of labor hours. The information you need is attached. So basically they're asking, we have to find the comparison between the actual overhead and the budgeted overhead. And obviously you already know how to calculate the overhead absorption rate and how to calculate the under and over absorption. So if we absorb less than the actual, it is under absorption. If we absorb more than the actual, it is over absorption. So download the spreadsheet PA2, like from the question from the BPP. You can always download this one from the BPP. On the Google, if you type BPP spreadsheet, so they'll give you a link to download all of this Excel, and you can practice there as well. So let's have a look. What is the requirement here? They said open the rename file, and in cell B3 to B11, identify the basis you will use to allocate the overhead given in row 3 to 11 using the information. So allocate the overhead in each department using the basis you have chosen. So obviously they're asking to calculate the allocate the overhead. Now there are a few things you have to remember. The first thing we need to know, that is the allocation, then we do apportionment, and we do reapportionment. So what is the difference between these three? So the first one we have, that is called allocation. Number one, allocation. Allocation. So when I know exactly this cost belongs to which department, I use this one. For example, if I have a three department A, B, and C, and if I know this overhead belongs to department A, so I don't have to do the apportionment. I can say this overhead cost belongs to department A, so I can directly allocate this cost to that specific department. So this is called allocation. So when you know exactly this cost belongs to which department, this is called allocation. So known cost center. So if I know the cost center, this overhead belongs to that cost center. So this is the allocation. The next one is apportionment. Apportionment. Apportionment, basically you split the overhead in different department. So split the overhead in different department. Split the overhead in different department. Split the overhead in different department. So if we know the overhead, for example, let's say the rent, and we have a three department. Let's say we have a rent £9,000, And if we have a three department, let's say department A, B, and C. So if we have three department, and this rent I'm going to split, this all three department. So based on some criteria, for example, rent normally we apportioned based on the use, based on the square meter, based on the space. So let's say the square meter I use, and that is basically 3000, 3000, and 3000. So I have used this 9000 to split A, B, and C. So this is basically the apportionment. And finally, the last thing we're going to see, that is called reapportionment. 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 The reapportionment is all about reapportionment is all about when when we move the overhead from one department to another department. For example, after doing the apportionment, then the service department cost or the service department overhead later on we move to the production department. So, for example, if we have a three department X, Y, and Z. So X and Y is the production department, and Z is the service department. So all this service department cost later on we reapportion to the production department. The reason is service department don't have an income. So at the end, service department have no department cost. So service department itself don't have an income. So at the end, the service department cost has to be shared by the production department. So that's the reason the service department cost we have to reapportion to the production department. So if there is a service department overhead, that one we have to reapportion later on with the production department. So this type of cost obviously not gonna see like if the question don't tell you. If the question tell you reapportion, only that time you do the reapportion. So now this question tell us do the allocation and apportionment and the reapportionment. So all of these three things we're going to do from this question. So let's have a look. Start with the first one. The first one we have here, and that is allocation. So they said overhead allocated to each department. So they're saying allocate the overhead to each department. Okay. After that, they said put an if function, in cell H12 that will show the balance if the column total to be add same total in the C12 and check if they're not. So obviously the if function is you already have done few times the if function. If function basically justify your answer. It will tell you like, okay, if it is this, then that will be balanced. If it is not, then it will be checked. So if function is quite important for your synoptic exam. So you have to make sure you know the if function very well. Then the next one we have reallocate the overhead allocation. So reallocate means reapportion. Reallocate means the reapportion the overhead to the store department and overhead to the positive figure and the overhead away from the store negative figure. So there's an if it is a minus, then show any negative figure. If it is a plus, it is a positive figure. But they said confirm the accuracy of what you have done totaling C3, the figure D13 to G13. The total should be nil. Of course, like for example, they're saying let's say we have A, B, and C and D. So let's say that D have a cost for 9,000. And if I split this 9,000 to C, B, and A, so what we do, we said 3,000, 3,000, and 3,000. So at the end, what I'll do, I'll minus this 9,000. I'll say this one will be minus because this 3 comes here now. So the question said when you check this 3, this plus this is has to be equal to this 9,000 because this is the one we're splitting here. And normally when you do the portion or reapportion, we show in a bracket. Rather than writing the minus sign, we put in a bracket. Bracket in accounting terms is a minus. If you put the bracket in Excel, the Excel will understand this is basically the minus, the subtract, the takeaway. All right, so the next point we have here, that is they said in cell D14 to cell F14, subtotal the overhead allocated to the two production department and the maintenance department. Reallocate the overhead allocate to the maintenance department in row 15 using the information given. Show the overheads allocate to other department as positive figure and overhead allocated away from the maintenance as a negative figure. So of course, if I take the overhead from one department to another department, that will be the negative. If I put somewhere, that will be the positive. Confirm the accuracy of what you have done by totaling this again. In cell D16, in cell D16 and E16, subtotal the overhead allocate to the two production department. Insert the budgeted labor hour for the two production department. Of course, we need to know what is the basis for the apportionment, and that will help us to do calculate our overhead absorption rate, OAR. If you remember your OAR, that is overhead absorption rate, OAR, overhead absorption rate. So that will be our overhead, budgeted overhead, and on the bottom we have budgeted activity, budgeted activity. So on the top is budgeted overhead, on the bottom is budgeted activity. Now the budgeted activity could be labor hour, could be machine hour, and it could be unit, could be anything. So any of this, but the question said we're going to use the labor hour, so we're going to use the labor hour. Then we have calculate the overhead absorption rate for the two productions. So you're going to calculate the OAR, overhead absorption rate, for the two production department, and insert the figure in cell D18 and E18. That's fine. Then color the cell in a yellow background and black border. Of course, you know how to do it. So you can color the line and make a black border. Then next one said calculate the amount of overhead absorbed by actual production using the information given about actual labor hour. So this is the one we do when we calculate the actual overhead. Now, when we calculate the under or over absorption, so under or over absorption, under and over absorption. Now, under and over absorption is all about did we absorb more or less. Now, for example, if I have a actual overhead absorbed 10,000, and if I said overhead absorbed that is 9,000, that means you have to ask yourself. You will ask yourself, did you absorb more or less? So we absorb less, so that will be under absorb. We never look at the actual. We never look at the actual. We always look at like, did we absorb more or did we absorb less? If we absorb more, it is over absorbed. If we absorb less than the actual, it is under absorbed. Now, when we calculate the overhead absorbed, here we're going to use the actual number of hours, not the budgeted. Remember that here we use the budget, but when you calculate the overhead absorbed, what we do, for example, here it is 10 pound, 10 pound per labor hour. So this 10 pound we multiply with the actual number of labor hours. So actual number of hours, let's say 10,000 hours, and we multiply with this 10. And that will tell us how much is the overhead absorbed overhead. And we compare this with the actual. All right, so the next point we have here, that is, let's read that. Then calculate the under over absorbed. Okay, we can show that it's a positive figure showing a green, so that's fine. Enter the figure for the absorbed overhead in cell B26 and calculate the profit. Okay, so you can calculate the profit. Enter the figure for the over and under absorbed, so we can do that. Tidy the calculation by showing all the negative figure in bracket. So they said all the negative figure show in a bracket, and all figure with a comma for 30. Ensure the worksheet tab is called answer. Rename it goal 6. So this is just information. So that's fine. Then we move to the next one. There is another question here. They said the director of any should want to know what changes they can make to the depreciation in order to achieve under over absorption. To comply with this, the factory rent will be 95,000. Change the factory rent this, and after that, use the goal seek function. Goal seek, we already know how to do the goal seek, so there is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing new. Draft an email to the following. So report the actual profit and the amount of overhead under and over absorbed. Explain why the over and under absorption has been occurred. Give one advantage and one disadvantage of absorption costing. Okay, so the question look like really big. Of course, in the exam you'll see more or less like that, but obviously if you do more practice, you'll be more okay with that. All right, so I'm going to open the Excel sheet now. The camera will be off for a little bit time now, and I'm going to open the Excel sheet. Let's share the Excel. All right, so this is the question. So of course, like this Excel, you can see it from your BPP. So if you type like the what's that called, the BPP spreadsheet, so it will give you some link and you can download this file, and from that file you can see you have few information already there, because you need this information in order to calculate all of this quotient they said. And remember, you have to have your quotient with you when you do this type of quotient. You have to have the quotient in front of you. So that's why I recommend when you do your exam, especially for the synoptic, make sure you have the two screen on your computer. So make sure you have this two screen on the computer, because you have to look at the question. I have the question in front of me, so obviously like I can try to read. So let's follow the first step. We can see we have information and we have a question. That is a two thing. So we take all this information from here and we follow it to complete the question. So let's have a look. That the first one, they said use the apportion area. So we use the apportion basis. Now this is all the overhead we have. Let's read the question a little bit fast. Allocation of overhead. So we have factory rent 80,000, factory heating 15,000, production department supervisor cost we have 40,000, and we have production department supervisor cost 2, that is 35,000. So we have a two production department, PD1 and PD2, and we have a maintenance and a store. So all of this we have on the question. So then the next one we have, that is maintenance supervisor cost, and we have a store supervisor cost. We have a depreciation equipment. We have a canteen expense, welfare cost, and we have a total overhead allocated. So all of this information we have, that's all the overhead. That's my total overhead. So now we have to know which one I have to do the allocation and which one I have to do the portion, isn't it? So the first one we have the factory rent, then heating. So now this one, production department one supervisor cost. We understand this cost completely belongs to production department 1, isn't it? So if this is a production department 1, that means this cost completely belongs to production department 1. Then after that, production department 2, the production department 2, that will go to production department 2. I don't have to do the apportionment, I have to only do the allocation. Allocation means the whole cost will come here, but apportion means I split the cost with all the department. Then we have a maintenance supervisor. So we can see this cost belongs to the maintenance. So we have a maintenance. So that means 30,000 will come here is allocation. Store belongs to the store. And depreciation, we have this one, we have to apportion with all of this based on the quotient requirement. We have a canteen, we have a welfare, this all have to be apportionment. So allocation, when the cost straight away go to one specific department, but when there is apportionment, that has to be split between among the departments. So let's have a look what is the information we have after that. Then we have some information, allocation of maintenance, then total production department overhead, then direct labor hours, overhead absorption rate, under or over absorbed. Then we have revenue, then we have a direct material, we have a direct labor, then overhead absorbed, this cost we need to be calculated, then profit using the overhead absorption, then under and over absorbed, and the actual profit. We already know because of the under and over absorption, the profit figure will be fluctuate. So if there is a over absorbed or if there is under absorbed, so we need to see how the profit will be fluctuate because of that. So uh, we have this information and we can calculate the actual profit after that. So if we absorb more, obviously that means that will increase our profit because we need to reduce it. If we absorb less, that will increase our cost, definitely profit will be less. On the information section, we can see we have the area. So this is for the square meter. Then we have a net book value. Then we have a number of employees. Then we have the labor hours. Then we have actual hours. Then we have the reapportion basis. So they said percentage of work done by the store for other department. So we can see here the store is empty because this one I have to make it empty and I have to reapportion all the store cost, 40% here, 40%, 50% here, 40% here, and 10% for the maintenance. On the other hand, we have work done for the maintenance for the other department. So we can see the maintenance is empty here and 60% for the PD1 and 40% for the PD2. And we have all the overhead that we already have on the question as well. And we have some more information from here, the overhead. This is the actual information. So this is all the actual figure. All right, so I have a question in front of me. I'm going to follow the question and try to do one by one. So obviously, if you want to do this question, you have to have the question in front of you. That will be very helpful. So the rent, the basis we're going to use to apportion, that will be the area. So that's the area we have, area, area. So I'm going to write area here. So that's what I'm going to use for the rent apportionment. When I'm going to apportion the rent, I'm going to use the area. Thus, I'm writing that. Then the next one I'm going to write, that is for the heat and lighting. I'm going to use again area. Then I'm going to use this one, that's the allocation. So I don't have to use anything specific because this cost belongs to PD1, production department 1. So I just said PD1. Then I said PD2, and the maintenance, it is allocation, it's not apportionment because this cost belongs to the maintenance. So I said maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Then the supervisor cost, that belongs to the store because it's a store supervisor cost. I'm not going to give this cost to other department. That will go to the stores. So I said stores. Then we have a depreciation of equipment. So For the depreciation, we use the net book value. Net book value. This is the portion basis we're going to use. Net book value. Then after that, we have a canteen. For the canteen, we're going to consider the number of employees, how many employees we have. So you're going to write the employees, 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 and we're going to use the employees again for the welfare cost as well. So this is the basis for the apportionment. Now I'm going to see how I'm going to split this cost. So PD1, PD2, and that. So the total cost is 80,000 for the rent. So I'm going to split based on the information we have here. So we have 16, 12, 8, and 40. The total is 40. So total is a 40, and obviously this one have to be splitted between PD1 16,000, PD2 12,000, and maintenance 8 and store 4. So I said okay, so let's do that. So we said this 80,000 I'm going to divide with the total square meter, that is 40,000, and I'm going to multiply with the PD1. So that will give me basically the rent has to be bear by the PD1. So PD1 has to bear 32,000 pound from 80,000. Why? Because they are using 16,000 square meter. So based on the square meter, so first what I do, I have to have the total cost and divide with the total square meter, and that gives me the cost per square meter. And once I have the cost per square meter, I'll multiply which department use how many square meter, and that will give me actually the cost for this department. So same thing I do for the PD2. I said 80,000 divide 40 multiply by 12,000, and that gives me 24,000. And the same way we do for the next two. For the maintenance, 80,000 over 40 times 8,000, that gives me 16,000. And we have stores, 80,000 divide 40,000 times by 4, that's 8,000. So this is the total information we have for the rent. So rent is splitted based on that. We can always check like how much the rent. So if we try to check, we split the all 80,000 rent, we can just quickly have a look. If you added all of this, if you select all of this, it will show you in the bottom right corner 80,000. That means we split it the right amount. Then for the factory heating, we will exactly follow the same thing. So we have the total is 15, and we divide by 40 times by 16, and that gives me 6,000. And we have the same thing, 15 divide 40 times 12, that gives me 4,500. 15 divide 40,000 times 8,000, that gives you 3,000. And we have 15 divide 40,000 times 4,000, that gives me 1,500. So that's it for the rent and the heat. The next one we have the production department, and of course this department belongs to this cost belongs to only for the PD1, so we need to just allocate to PD1. So he said okay, this 40,000 will come to PD1. That's it. Then the next one we have supervisor cost for PD2, so that belongs to PD2, so just make equal sign, link it to 35,000, it will come here. Then the maintenance cost belongs to the maintenance department, so we select this one, equal that 30,000. And after that we have a store, so this cost belongs to a store, so we said a store. That's it. After that we have a depreciation, and that will be splitted based on the net book value. So let's have a look. Where is the net book value? So we have a net book value here. So based on this information, we'll do that. So let's have a look how much we have for the net book value and how much is paid for our depreciation cost. So the first one we have for the depreciation, so you need to put the equal sign. 20,000 is the depreciation, divide by the net book value 160 times by 80, and that gives me 10,000. Then we have the next one, PD2, 20,000, divide 160 times 600,000, that gives me 7,500. Then we have 20,000, divide 160 times 200,000, and this gives me 2,500. This one have nothing, so you don't have to worry about it, so there is nothing here. So the next one we have the canteen expense. The canteen expense we have, that is the employees, so it will be splitted based on the employees. So we have 10,000 divide how many employees we have, 50, then times, for the PD1 we have 20, so that is 4,000. Then you can see how much is here. You can always check with absolute referencing. If it is work, you can do that. There is no formula the question asks to do, so question didn't say you can do this way, so you can use any formula you like. So divide 50 times 18, that gives me 3,600. Then we have 10,000 divide 50 times 10, this gives me 2,000. So that's my employees for the canteen, isn't it? So let me say the canteen. Oh, I took the wrong one, so it's not that. So 10,000 divide by 50 times by 7, that gives me 1,400. The last one we have 10,000 divide 50 times by 5, that gives you 1,000. The next one I have the welfare cost. So 5,000, we're going to use the employees for the basis of apportionment. So divide 50 times 20, 2,000. Then you can use that the same way, 50 times 18, 1,800. Then we have 5,000 divide 50 times 700. 5,000 500. So that's it. After that, we need to make a total. So total overhead, we can use the sum, auto sum. So we can say the auto sum all of this, that will be 94,000, and we can actually use that. So that will be our total overhead. Now we need to check, because this one and this equal has to be equal. So that gives me 265 and 265. So we can check the balance by using the question said use if formula. So we can check with the if it is match or not. So let's check the if. So we said equal if, so I mean if all of this, if this plus this plus this plus this, then close the bracket, equal to this, then we said is a balance. So balanced, balanced, comma, if not, then checked. Check. After that, you have to close the bracket. I think I need to put one more bracket because there is two bracket I'm using. And if I enter, it will tell me is it balanced or checked. So basically, that means this 4 is balanced with that. Now, that's why it's a balance. If I change anything from here, it will be like check. For example, if I said 0, then it will be changed to check. If it is not matched, it will be automatically tell you. So it's balanced actually. All right, so this is the next step. And after that, we have to do, if we follow the instruction from the question, they said, now we have to allocation of a store. So that's my total overhead. Now I'm going to allocate this store. So that's my store. That is 41,000. This 41,000 I'm going to allocate based on the question said in this 3 department. So they said allocation of a store 50, 40, and 10. 50, 40, and 10. So let's do that. So here I'm going to do 50% of that times 50%. I can actually use the bracket. So maybe that will be helpful. 20,500. Then I'm going to do here 40% of that. 16,400. Then we do, is it 40, 60? Let me say, I forgot. So 50, 40, and 10. Yeah, so it's 10. So we said 41,000 times 10. Close the bracket. That gives me 4,100. And this one has to be vanish. So they said use the bracket for the minus. So we can say 41,000, but we will make it a bracket. So we make the selection. We make it minus 41,000 first. Then you select the cell, and after that, right click, go to the format cell. And once the format cell is open, select the custom. And from the custom, choose like anyone you like from the bottom, the bracket. And you press OK, so it will be bracket. All right, so this is the allocation of the store. So after the allocation of the store, the next thing we're going to do, we need to now make a total again. So after the allocation of the store, then you have to make the allocation of the maintenance. But before that, we have to make the total first. So we said make a total. If you added this to the sum, that will give you 114,500. I think we can do now this. So 92,800. Then you have 57,700. Now the next question is to allocation of the maintenance. So we can see we have a maintenance total now 57,700. This one we're going to allocate to the PD1 and PD2. Let's have a look. What is the question they said? They said work done by the maintenance department is 60 and 40. So 60% for the PD1 and 40% for the PD2. So that's fine. So we move to the question now. 60 and 40. Okay, so 60% here. So I said 60% will be here. That is 34,620, and 40% will be here. That is 23,800, and this one have to be minus. So I said minus 57700, and we make the bracket again the way I did before. Format the cell, customs, select the bracket one. Okay, that's it. So this is gone. So actually if you make the sum, it will show you even gone, because Excel understand it is a minus. All right, then after that we have total production overhead now. So all you need to do, you need to make a total of that. So make a total sum of this, so 149 120, and for the PD2 is a 115,880. Now we have to see how much is the direct labor hour. So let's have a look the question, the direct labor hour. So you need to put the direct labor hour, because we are now going to calculate the overhead absorption rate. So let's find the direct labor hour. So we have 15,615. No, that's the budgeted. We're not going to take the actual, remember, we'll take the budgeted, because now we are doing OAR, overhead absorption rate. So that will be top will be the budgeted overhead, and the bottom it will be the activity. That will be the our budgeted activity. It could be labor hour, could be machine hour, could be the unit. It depends on the questions. So we'll take this to 14,912 and 14,485. So you can copy this and take it to the question and paste it here. So now we have this the hours, and we will calculate the OAR, that is overhead absorption rate, and we know how to do it. All you need to do, you need to make a divide. So this is the cost, divide the hours. So you can make a bracket for that. That is 10, and hopefully that will go automatically. That will be 8. So 10 and 8. This is the overhead absorption rate. 10 for the PD1 and the 8 for PD2. Now they said make a bracket and make a black border for that. You can make the thick border, and they said make it yellow. So we can do the yellow. All right, so this is we have done. Then the next one, they said find the actual overhead absorption. So actual overhead absorption. So actual overhead means how many actual hours we have, and we multiply with the overhead absorption rate. So we said, okay, let's do that. So we need to come to the cell C. So it's a C19. So we are in C19 or C18. So C19, yeah, C19. So let's do this one now. So on the C19, we need to see the actual number of hours. That's what we need. So that's the actual, isn't it? So that's the actual number of hours, 15,615 and 15033. So we'll do that. So let's do that. If we can do from here. So we said equal, I put the bracket. There is a 2 entry, so we need to make 2 bracket for that. So we said D18. So this one times with the actual number of hours. So you can go back and we can enter that. Then we can close the bracket. Then we make a plus. Then we have to go back. Then we do E18, and after that we multiply with the actual for the PT. Let's see if it is work. Yeah, so we have 276,414. This is basically the actual overhead. So this is the actual overhead we have now. Now we need to calculate, is it under or over? So obviously this is the actual overhead we already have, and the question already tell this is the overhead absorbed. So based on the actual number of hours, we multiply with the overhead absorption rate, and that gives me the overhead absorbed. Now on the question already said the actual overhead is 274. This is from the question, actual overhead. So we can now calculate the under or over absorbed. So we can see the sum of 19, sum of say 19 minus the actual. Maybe you can pick from here if is it okay. Then you close the bracket, and that gives me, that's not the right answer, isn't it? The difference is wrong. So let's do it again. So we said, let's minus it, that is 274,000. That's the actual overhead we have, and that gives me 2414. That's the difference. That's the difference of the overhead. That's my overhead absorbed. I absorbed 276, but actually is 274. So that means I have absorbed more. If I absorbed more, remember that is over absorbed, and over absorbed will always increase the profit. Over absorption will always increase the profit. So I said okay. So let's have a look. So they said the over and under absorption make the front made the color green. So let's make it green. So green. Okay. And after that they said complete the profit statement. That's the profit statement. So let's complete the profit statement. We need the over or under absorb, but we already know it is over absorbed. So we click here, click there. That gives me the over absorption, and we'll add this too, because of the over absorption the profit will be definitely increased. Now I think before that we need to, this is for the overhead, isn't it? So that's 276, that's the overhead. So minus that, so 276, that's my overhead, but we can make minus this one as well. That's my overhead absorbed. So way to format, customs, and we can do this auto sum. That will give me how much is the profit, actual profit. So 963,586, and after that we have to link the under or over absorbed. So we have a over absorbed here, so we calculate that 2414, and after that if we add it, that will give me the actual profit. So that's it, 966,000. So that's my actual profit we have. So what we have done here, we have included the overhead absorbed, then we added the overhead absorption. Now this is basically the over absorption, that's why I'm adding. If it is under absorbed, make sure you minus, because if it is over absorption, your profit will be increased because you absorb more, the expense is more. If it is under absorbed, then obviously you have to increase the cost, that will reduce your profit. All right, so this is for the question. And the next thing they asked to change the figure for that and do the goal seek, and they said make a copy. So you can copy this information. How you do that? So all you need to do, you need to right click and click move or copy. So move or copy, and on the quotient you can select the quotient, and after that you click create a copy. And if you click that, that will be another new worksheet will be open in the bottom. And they said make a name of the goal seek. You can do anything whatever they said, goal seek, and they said to make a goal seek of that. So all I need to do, we need to do a goal seek for that. So let's do that. Uh, let's go to the data function, because the goal seek is on the data. So if you click the data, the goal seek is on the what if function. So what if analysis, click the goal seek, and they said select select the select the value of the depreciation, the net book value. So they said select that. This question could be sometimes so confusing, so make sure you read carefully. So we need to check that. So they're saying take the data of C20. So that's the one they're asking. So let's take that C20, and they're asking to value to make it 0, and by changing the cell of the net book value. So this one, you remember, this one is has to be linked with the formula. If it is if you don't use the formula, I can show this one to again to you. You can have a look, because if you don't use the formula, the goal stick formula not going to work. Remember that. So goal stick will only work if you use the formula all of this your worksheet. If you never use any formula in the worksheet, then the goal stick will stop work. So it's very very important you use your formula for the whole worksheet, so that goal seek is work. So the goal seek is the formula. You need to set a value like what you want by doing what. For example, if you said like I want to I want to let's say if you said I want to do a something like, for example, change the change the uh, depreciation. I want to change the I want to change the cost of the net asset, and I try to get this. So whatever you try to get, you need to tell through the goal seek function. So let's say, for example, if I said I want to do this. So in this question, they said like we want to have a zero value. We want to have a zero value for the for the for the under and over absorb. So they said, what if I don't want any over and under absorb? So we said set the cell. So you have to set the cell first. And the set the cell means like which cell I'm going to use. So that's my cell. So let's say under and over absorb. This is the cell I'm going to select. So that's my targeted cell. I select this cell. And what I want to make it 0. So my plan is I want to make it 0 by changing the what cell, by changing the depreciation. So how much depreciation I need to change in order to make the under and over absorption 0. So this is basically the goal seek. Normally the goal seek formula is used by the mortgage company. So if you take a mortgage, they said, okay, how many years you want to pay the mortgage? You said 10, 15 years, 20 years. And you put the amount and you said for this years, and it will tell you how much you need to pay every month. Or if you change the amount, it will tell you how long it takes. For example, if the client said I want to pay 5%, I want to pay 15%, so they can put the amount like initially. In a second it will tell you how many years and how much will be the amount. So all of this is very like simple through the goal seek if you use it in the right appropriate place. Sometimes you took a loan from the bank and you want to know how long it's going to take to pay the loan bank. So goal seek would be the very useful formula to identify how much will be the interest and how much will be the payment for that. So if you press the OK, it will calculate everything automatically. Now you can see here they make this one 0. So you can see they make the under and over absorption amount 0. So they make it 0. And they said your net book value will be changed to this amount, then it can be 0. So anything you want, you can do with the goal seek, and you can use it for the different purpose. So this is basically the question we have for our question number 2.2. And as I said before, all we need a lot of practice to complete this type of question. And in the exam, of course, like the answer will not be difficult. Even the question look like difficult. Even you see when you done the answer, actually you feel it's not that difficult. But actually, when you read the question and you follow every single cell, that will give you a lot of stress. So make sure like you look at your book and try to follow like cell number 20 on J, cell number 20 on F. So how you do that? So obviously once you do some practice, obviously like after that, that will be more suitable for you, like to do the question really quick. So in the exam normally they will either ask you the profit statement, for example, from the if the question comes from the advanced bookkeeping, they will ask you to do the trial balance, the extended trial balance. They'll ask you to do some adjustment. They will ask you to do the incomplete records. They can ask you to do some depreciation, non-current asset, this type of thing that you've done before. If the question come from the final account preparation, then the question will come from the partnership. The question can come from the sole trader, and the question can come from the incomplete records, this thing. Then if the question there will be no question from the indirect tax, so you don't have to worry about the indirect tax. So only the question will come from the advanced bookkeeping, the question will come from the management accounting costing, and the final account preparation. So these three question and everything will be relevant to this three thing will be relevant to your this three question will be relevant to your synoptic. So obviously like as I said, like this synoptic was quite important for all of you, and that's the reason we specially arranged this class for all of you. Like even though we cannot take it through the classroom, but it's better if we have done it through online, because you have the access now with the recording video. So even if you don't do your exam in this month March, if you do your exam in May, still you can log into your account and you can always see this video, and that will be very helpful for you to revise yourself. And as I said, you should have your the question bank, and all these five question from the question bank has to be practiced. And the question bank, the whole question bank for the synoptic, you have to revise at least twice. The whole question bank you have to revise twice. And top of that, there is some additional practice paper you have to arrange that. Sometimes like you can follow some mock question from the BPP. And of course, like if you go to the BPP website, there is some note they sell for the synoptic. Maybe you have to spend some money for that, but obviously that will be so helpful for the synoptic exam, because synoptic exam obviously is not going to be easy in the exam. I've seen a student, they are very good, they got a very good score in the normal exam, but the synoptic they have done a few times. So make sure you make yourself ready fast, then you do the synoptic exam, and you do everything you can for make sure you pass the synoptic exam. So we have in March and we have in May, then I think we have June as well. So you can decide which one will be more suitable for you. And the synoptic window will be open for 1 week. So it's not only one day. So let's say for the March, it will be open on 22nd of March. So from 22nd till another 7 days you can add, so you can do the exam for the whole week. But it depends when KBM have a time for the exam. So you need to make sure like you call the center, you tell like, if you want to do in Park Royal, if you want to do in Barking. So you need to speak to the admin team and tell them like I like to do my synoptic, so what will be the suitable day. So you need to make sure you confirm your day first if you want to do it this month or if you want to do in May. So you have to make sure you book your exam in advance. All right, guys. So this is the question we have done today. And obviously, next Friday, we will not do a lesson, but we will do, I will be here for answering some of your questions. So let's say next week, we can discuss about the exam techniques. So what is the exam techniques you can do on the exam day? So for example, how we can follow, how you can answer all this question, and obviously like what is the meaning of the analysis, what is the meaning of identifying, what is the meaning of explaining. So we can talk about the exam techniques and the writing techniques and the way we can manage our exams. So for example, how we download the file, how to upload the file, this is very important, how you use the surname and the number. So we can talk a little bit the techniques next Friday evening. And if you have any question, then we can during you revise from this week, then I'll try to answer if I can all of these questions. So next Friday, obviously, we'll try to have a question and answer session.